really interested in the consent question because obviously a lot of books and young adult books deal with questions of or present narratives surrounding first sexual encounters or even questionable sexual encounters. And do you think that they do a good enough job as it currently stands in terms of what's out there in portraying the complexities surrounding consent in a way that, because of course we say that books do offer us teaching moments and do offer us often, scope for reflection and pathways to help guide our own experiences. Do you think that what's currently out there in terms of young adult literature does a good enough job with that?
The short answer is probably not, and that's not the fault of writers and publishers. It's a bigger problem than that in society. I think it has been it's sort of inexplicable, and yet it's really explicable how we're still in the situation that we're in with gender inequality, and particularly around gender double standards in 2021 in Australia. Because I've worked with adolescents for my whole career, and because I've had insight into some of those anonymous concerns that particularly young girls have had over the years, I think, I've certainly arrived at my own theory, which is that sexuality and those early experiences of arousal and attraction, which occur naturally at the time of puberty, and so that can be as young as 9 or 10 in some kids. It usually seems to, those kind of hormonal surges that lead to more sexual arousal and perhaps really wanting to have some early intimate encounters, that seems to start around late primary school, early high school, and that's not for everybody, but for a lot of young people, that's the case. And I think that's where we start to really see that gender double standard playing out. So the sorts of questions that I was asked, and that I see in my clinical work as a doctor as well, are different for girls and boys. I think boys feel that they're supposed to know what to do, that they're supposed to be across it all, and they're just not, whereas girls also don't really know, but they also are socialized into thinking that, well, they're there to be, to please everybody, not just boys, but especially boys. So that's a really important issue to address. That's a really serious problem, and we see that then play out throughout the rest of our lives as adults. So I think if we're talking about books that are already written and that are out there, yes, there are certainly some, and have been, that speak to that, coming of age sort of stuff. But the focus on dealing with gendered expressions of sexuality and gendered attitudes towards sexuality, I think there just needs to be a lot more conversation and discourse about that in everywhere, in literature, in the arts, but also in in government policy, in the classroom. I think we shy away publicly from just speaking these things, from saying the right words, talking about what it's actually like to be a young adolescent, trying to navigate the world of sex and sexuality and identity in a really confusing world. There's a lot of messages out there about sex and sexuality. There's a lot of exposure, sometimes often unintentionally, to online pornography, but we don't talk about it other than to say it's bad or don't do it. We know, we know it's there, but we're not going to talk about it because that might make it go away. That's a really unhelpful way to help young people grow up feeling good about their sexuality.